Imagine gathering with your closest friends to celebrate the spring equinox, hoping to bring in good fortune, only to accidentally invite something dark into your life. That's exactly what happened to Lena, Mark, Sarah, and David. They were tired of the same old routines, stuck in dead-end jobs, and life feeling a little stagnant. Then, one night, Lena found it, the perfect solution, an online ritual, supposedly designed to manifest new beginnings, prosperity, and luck for the year ahead. The ritual was simple: light candles, chant some words, and focus on your desires for the future. It seemed harmless, maybe even a little fun. After all, it was just an old tradition, right? They gathered in Lena's apartment, the night of the spring equinox. The air was crisp, the first signs of spring in the breeze that slipped through the cracked window. The room was lit only by candles, their soft, flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. Each friend took a moment to focus on their hopes. Lena, her dream job; Mark, a relationship that felt real; Sarah, a fresh start after a broken past; David, peace after years of struggle. They began the chant, as the instructions had said. Low, steady words that felt almost hypnotic. The flames of the candles danced erratically, the air grew thick, but no one thought much of it. It wasn't until the air grew cold, unnaturally cold, that they noticed something was wrong. A gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing every candle in a single swoop. The room went pitch black. Mark laughed nervously. "Guess we got carried away, huh?" But then, a voice, low and echoing, filled the room. "You've summoned me." The friends froze, their hearts racing. It wasn't just any voice. It was a whisper that crawled under their skin, sending a chill to the very marrow of their bones. The temperature plummeted. They could see their breath in the air. "What? What's happening?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The voice responded, cold and sharp. "I am the spirit of new beginnings, and you are my offering." Suddenly the candles relit, but the flames were black, twisting with an unnatural hunger. The shadows in the corners of the room moved. They didn't just flicker, they stretched, alive, as if the darkness itself was watching them. Lena's heart raced. "What do you want from us? You called for change. I am the change. I am the chaos that comes with new beginnings. You will all feel it. All of you," the voice echoed. One by one, strange things began to happen. Mark's phone vibrated with countless notifications, job rejections, messages from old friends he'd lost touch with, all of them demanding answers, pulling at him with old emotions he had buried long ago. Sarah's eyes went wide as her body began to tremble. Her mind raced with memories of her past relationships, every painful, unresolved moment rushing back to haunt her. She clutched her head, fighting to hold on to her sanity. David, too, felt the spirit's grasp. His legs buckled as overwhelming guilt from years of mistakes consumed him. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse with power, like the room itself was alive, feeding off their fear. But Lena, the one who had summoned it, felt the worst of all. The very air around her seemed to tighten, squeezing the hope out of her chest. Every dream, every goal she had once believed in felt empty now, as though the spirit had consumed every ounce of light she had left. The darkness grew thicker, the shadows closing in around them. They couldn't run. They couldn't hide. The spirit wasn't just a force. It was a manifestation of everything they had wanted, twisted into something horrific. It thrived on the chaos of beginnings. It was drawn to their desire for change, feeding on their fears, their weaknesses, their desperation. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the voice echoed one final time. "This is only the beginning." The lights flickered back on. The air returned to normal. The spirit was gone. The friends stood there in stunned silence. The room, once full of laughter and hope, now felt suffocating. They were left with only the silence and the knowledge that something had changed. Something dark had been unleashed. They never spoke of it again. But the scars, emotional, invisible, remained. What would you have done if you had summoned something you couldn't control? Would you have tried to make things right, or let it be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever moved to a new place and felt something off? Strange energy that you couldn't explain? That's what happened to Sarah. She was new to the neighborhood, excited to start fresh. As soon as the spring equinox rolled around, she began to notice, well, strange things. It started small. Neighbors were a little too friendly, a little too eager to welcome her, especially around the equinox. They'd drop by with homemade cookies, always smiling just a little too widely. He'd mention the special date, always in whispers. But at first, Sarah chalked it up to small-town charm. Then, every year, on the night of the equinox, the air would feel heavier. Winds would howl, carrying whispers she couldn't quite make out. Lights in the houses would flicker, casting strange shadows across her windows. She couldn't shake the feeling that everyone in the neighborhood was waiting for something. Then, one night she heard it. Footsteps outside her door. It was late, the sky a thick canvas of stars, and there was no reason for anyone to be walking around at that hour. She peeked through the curtains, she saw them. Neighbors, all dressed in black, silent, walking in a straight line toward the woods at the edge of the neighborhood. They were moving like a procession, ritual. Curiosity got the best of her. Sarah waited a few minutes, grabbed her coat, and followed them. The woods weren't far. As she stepped through the trees, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was unnaturally still. No birds, no animals. It was like the world had gone silent. The procession stopped at an old stone altar hidden deep in the forest. In the flickering light of torches, Sarah saw what looked like symbols carved into the stone. Symbols she'd never seen before. People gathered around it, muttering softly, their eyes closed in concentration. And then, the ground trembled. Sarah stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. She had to be imagining it, right? No. The air was thick now, heavy with an energy that made her heart race. You could feel it pulling at her like a magnetic force. Leader of the group, an older woman with sharp, knowing eyes, stepped forward, holding a blade. In a voice that seemed to echo in the woods, he spoke a single word: sacrifice. The crowd went silent. The ground began to shift beneath Sarah's feet, and suddenly she understood. This was no ordinary cult. This was an ancient belief. The spring equinox, the moment of balance between day and night, wasn't just a time for celebration. It was the gateway, portal. They needed a sacrifice to open it. Sarah watched in horror as the woman raised the blade high. She turned to run, but something in the air held her in place. People were staring at her now, eyes wide, waiting. They knew she'd seen too much. The weight of their gaze, the leader stepped forward. You were always meant to join us. The world around Sarah seemed to bend, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing open. There was a pull at the edges of her mind, a whisper calling her to step forward. Sarah didn't. She couldn't. She gathered every ounce of strength she had, and in a flash, she ran. When she burst out of the woods, the world seemed to return to normal. Sounds of the night resumed. Winds, the crickets, the distant murmur of the neighborhood. It was as if nothing had happened. Sarah knew better now. She knew the truth. The neighborhood was a facade. They weren't just waiting for the equinox. They were waiting for the doorway to open. They would stop at nothing to cross over. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? You have confronted the cult or run as fast as you could? Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Ravenshade was beautiful in the spring, like something out of a painting. Small cottages with ivy creeping up their walls, flowers in bloom, scent of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. Every year, townsfolk celebrated the spring equinox with a festival, time for renewal, for joy. No one ever asked why. They just celebrated. They wore flower crowns, danced around bonfires, and feasted. This year, the forgotten gods were about to remind them of why the festival had started in the first place. It wasn't to have fun. The sun dipped low over the town square, turning everything into golden light as the festival kicked off. Children giggled and chased each other, their faces painted with bright spring colors. At the center of it all stood Mayor Harding, his booming voice encouraging everyone to join in the dance of renewal. It was all smiles, music, and laughter, except for Clara, the new historian in town. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something just doesn't sit right, she muttered to herself, watching the crowd. Liam, the local farmer, laughed beside her. Maybe it's just all the wine, the firelight. Get used to it. Clara wasn't convinced. As the evening darkened, Clara noticed something disturbing. Strange, ancient symbols had been carved into the stone surrounding the bonfire. She'd seen symbols like these before in old texts. Why were they here? Before she could ask, the music swelled, and the crowd, already merry, started to dance. Fire roared higher than it should have, its orange light casting eerie, unnatural shadows across the square. Music grew louder, and yet no one was playing the instruments anymore. Liam chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. Guess the fire's got a taste for drama tonight. Then his laughter turned to shock. He looked down at his hands. Green. Scaly. What the hell? One by one, townsfolk began to change. Some sprouted antlers like stags, others grew feathers, claws, their voices turning into weird, distorted, bird-like screeches. Isla, teenage artist, dropped her sketchbook in horror. Her drawings, images of fantastical creatures she'd drawn for fun, came to life. Clara grabbed Father Seamus, town's priest. What's happening? She demanded, but his face was pale. It's the gods, he whispered. Forgotten them. The festival was never a celebration. It was a ritual to keep them at bay. Now, they're reclaiming what's theirs. Chaos erupted as the transformed townsfolk attacked one another. New instincts took over, and the square turned into a nightmare. Clara, Liam, Isla, and Father Seamus escaped to the church. Inside, the priest revealed an ancient text hidden behind the altar, a book that explained everything. The gods are angry, Father Seamus muttered, his hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. The festival was a ritual. Thank you. You've forgotten them. Now they demand a price. Liam, now partly a satyr, snorted. Oh, great. Let's throw them another party. Maybe they'll be happy. We need to find the offerings, Clara said. Earth, fire, water, and air. We need to present them before sunrise, or they'll take the town as their own. Four split up to gather the offerings. Clara and Isla ventured into the woods for Earth. They found the rare flower that bloomed only on the equinox, guarded by a giant serpent. Isla distracted the creature with a quick sketch, just long enough for them to escape. Liam, now fully transformed, used his newfound strength to retrieve fire from the heart of the bonfire, which had turned into a swirling vortex. Father Seamus, his faith shaken, collected water from a sacred spring, battling his own doubts as he prayed for forgiveness. As dawn approached, they rushed back to the bonfire, their eyes wide as the transformed townsfolk surrounded them, their eyes full of fear and rage. Clara placed the offerings at the base of the fire. She began chanting the ritual. Flames roared, and a voice echoed through the square. You have remembered us, but will you honor us again? Clara stepped forward, her voice strong. We'll honor you, not out of fear, out of respect for the balance you bring. Flames flared, and just as quickly, they died down. Transformations reversed. Townsfolk collapsed, exhausted but human again. Liam, back to his old self, grinned. Well, that was a party to remember. Next year, we're sticking to bobbing for apples. Isla hugged her sketchbook tightly. Just paper again. Father Seamus knelt in silent prayer. Clara gazed over the town, a new respect in her heart for the town's history, the mysteries it held. Next year the festival was different. Townsfolk added a new ritual to honor the forgotten gods. Clara became the unofficial historian, ensuring the past would never be forgotten again. Liam started a new tradition, satyr costume contest. And, of course, he won. But as the bonfire crackled and the music played, no one noticed the faint glow in the flames, or the shadowy figures lurking in the woods, waiting for the next equinox. So what would you have done? Would you have honored the forgotten gods, or tried to stop them? Let me know in the comments below.